What's happening? Let's talk about music education for adults. But in order to do that, we want to start with music education for kids. Kids in general learn things pretty quickly. They're a little bit more like sponges than adults, but the "you can't teach old dogs new tricks" adage is not entirely true. There is a mindset around what slows adults down when they learn. But there are also things that speed up the process for adults when they're learning. So, to give the clarification here between learning as kids and learning as adults at a very general level, let's go with this. Kids, when you get them in a music classroom or a music lesson, you give them assignments, you show them how to do stuff, show them how to read the music, or you show them how to sort of parrot the music that they're being taught, and they play it back. And they play it back until they get it right. And they don't really know about why they're doing it. They don't necessarily care, except that they'll get approval on the other end of that, right? So kids really do thrive on that. Now, again, that's very much a generalization, but that's generally the approach to music education for kids. I'm going to teach you to play this little piece of music. Next week you come back and you play it right, and I put a little gold star on your page, and we move on to the next piece. I don't have to explain to you why we're doing any of this. I don't have to explain to you any reason why I'm giving you this particular song. You don't even care. You just get rewards, right? Now, generally, adults need to know why. So, when we become adults, at adolescence is where it begins, when we begin to deal with critical thinking skills and analytical reasoning, when we start to realize everything we're told isn't necessarily the exact truth, then we begin to assess whether we want to do something and why we might want to do something and why we might not want to do something. So, as adults, when we deal with music education, we need to know why. Why am I playing these particular chords? Why would I choose this particular song? Why do you want me to learn to read music on the guitar? Why do you want me to learn theory in the music? Why can't I just imitate it? Here's the way music education is typically done with adults. In a nutshell, the same way it's done with children. That's why so many adults don't experience the fulfillment of music lessons when they go to many lesson facilities, not all of them, of course, and to many music classes, not all of them, of course. But adults who are really trying to experience something more fulfilling, and that is what music gives us, they need to know why they're doing something. So, I didn't know this when I started teaching music. I stumbled upon it. I found also, as a student, that I didn't understand why I was being given certain assignments. And looking back on it, I can say pretty confidently I was being given certain assignments so that the teacher could justify their existence, bring me back next week, and get me dependent on them at every level. Fortunately, for my own education, I realized I could learn a lot of those things on my own. But also, unfortunately, for my own education, I realized I could learn a lot of those things on my own. Because I also didn't know what I needed to master the instruments I was working on, in my case, guitar and voice. So over many years of stumbling and struggling and, through getting a handle on guitar, going to some lessons, quitting after a while, doing the same thing with vocal coaching, I got very frustrated. Then I lucked out. I was walking down the street one day past Columbia College, Chicago, looked up at the sign and thought, maybe I should go back to school and get my music degree. And I walked in the door and there was a kid sitting at a desk right there. I was in my late 20s. I was already a working musician by the skin of my teeth. I was holding it together on stages. But I was already a working musician. And I went in, there was a kid sitting at a desk, and I said, hey, where do I find out about classes? And he said, right there, get in that line. I showed up on registration day. 2 weeks later, I was in class at Columbia College, got a 4.0 in my first semester because why? I knew exactly what I wanted. I wanted to be the best musician I could possibly be. And it turned out I had a really good understanding of what I didn't have. And I was very driven to get it. And what that school did, and I learned from this myself, when I set up a school, when I became a busier teacher and started working with more adults and more aspiring and working professionals, what they did really well was everybody at that school was a working musician. In fact, when you took core classes, when you took classes in any subject matter, they were professionals in that field. The science teacher was a research scientist, not somebody who just taught science. You know, the classical guitar instructor was a performing classical guitarist. The jazz guitar instructors were performing jazz guitarists. People who went into recording studios and worked in session work, people that performed with symphonies and jazz groups and that sort of thing. So they knew what we all needed to excel as artists. But the biggest thing I learned was I needed to fill in the gaps in my information. And this is what I've run into with students for 30 years. So adult music education is something where the coach, the teacher, whatever you like to call them, should be meeting you where you are, figuring out what it is you need to build a strong foundation with your instrument so that you can then go apply that to whatever music you want to play. You don't go learn country guitar or jazz guitar, rock and roll guitar, R&B voice. You go learn how to use the instrument and then apply it. Now, I'll just throw in a little caveat with the voice part. If you are classically trained or concert trained as a vocalist, you will want to adjust that a little bit if you go into contemporary voice. A really important element of contemporary music is whatever your instrument is, you should be focused on understanding your own creative voice in that process, and that should be something you start with right away. Now, I'm going to throw one little more thing into here before I go a little bit further on what's different about adult music education. That is this. When somebody comes to me and says, Phil, I'm just a hobbyist, I say, well, that's you're going to fail. And they kind of, what? I go, well, that's an excuse to not do your best work. I'm not saying, if you're going to do this instrument, whatever it is, voice or guitar or bass or ukulele or piano or whatever, that you have to go in and put the kind of time that a working professional does. You don't have it because maybe you have a day job, maybe you have other things you're dedicating yourself to, maybe you like golf, So, but here's the thing, to use golf as an analogy, says the guy who's never swung a club in his life. But if you play golf, do you like playing poorly? Same thing, if your hobby's basketball, do you like losing games? No, of course not. You want to be the best at what you do, even if it is your hobby, so that you can truly enjoy it. And here's the clincher. In 30 years, I have been shown by my students that absolutely everybody has talent. All we have to do is uncover it, nurture it, build the skills necessary, help them discover their own creative voice, and every single one of them who has put that work in has succeeded, has shown me that every one of us has an unlimited potential. So, for adult music education, what you need is to understand what you're trying to accomplish as a musician with whatever your instrument is. And you can sort of backwards engineer things. Hey, I want to be a really strong guitarist. I really enjoy playing guitar, maybe in a couple of different styles. Well, the best way to understand the guitar 100% is to take the mystery out of the fretboard. Well, how do I do that? Well, can you hold together a few chords and stuff? Maybe if you can play like a simple 12-bar blues and some, just even a couple of the pentatonic scale forms. Now you can do a little improvisation. You can go find backing tracks. I have them on my YouTube page. I have a whole playlist of backing tracks, and you can go play along with that and explore your own creative voice. And of course, this gets you using and applying the music even at this sort of beginning level, Then as you can start to hold that together a little bit, let's see, what else do I need to do? Now I'm starting to get confident on the fretboard. How do I start to learn what is going on the fretboard? what are these things I'm doing? What do we call the places I'm putting my fingers? Well, that's notes. That's what we call them, notes, right? It's music. So music is written in notation, at least music of the Western world, with which most of us communicate music to the rest of the world. Okay, so then maybe I want to go get a simple classical guitar book. I use this one since it's in front of me. This Parkening guitar method. I have put every one of my students over the years through that method. If you can read very basic music, you just you just know a little bit, then you can go through that book pretty easily, and it'll challenge you enough to build your technique in your right and left hand, and you'll get to where you understand what an A minor chord not only looks like on the shape of the fret, with the shape of your fingers on the fretboard, but what it looks like when it's written. And there's this really unfortunate joke, because it's mostly true, that if you want to get a guitar player to stop playing, you put music in front of them. And that's, yes, unfortunately, most of the time true. When I tell other musicians I meet who don't know me, if you ever need like a session player, let me know. If you ever need a guitarist running, they're like, oh yeah, that's nice, sure, whatever, man. Hear that all day. And then I say, I read, and they go, give me your card. Then you learn jazz chords and bar chords and things where you can move around a little bit now that your technique is improving from this classical method. Then you use those jazz chords and bar chords to learn more complex pieces of music. So if you need to be like good at like a 50% average to the rest of the guitar playing world, be good at a 75% average to the rest of the guitar playing world. And again, you can apply these same premises to your voice, or to your clarinet, or to your violin, to your harmonica, to your djembe, whatever you're playing. It doesn't matter. Be better than you need to be. Know everything you can from a foundational level. And that's your key element. What do I need to know to really understand the instrument without a lot of erroneous kind of BS that I'm never going to use? Which, yes, you find a lot of. But understand that adult music education is a form of collaborative education. It means that both of us are working together. Every one of my students, I tell them the same thing. This is very much like mentoring, coaching. We're going down the field together. I'm right alongside you, working my tail off to make sure you have the information you need to become the best at this instrument, whatever it is. So understand always, music education for children and music education for adults is different. And so as an adult, you're the one who's really in control. Tell them what you need, but also trust them when they say, well, you're also going to need this. But if they start to waste your time, tell them to get lost. If they can't give you why you're doing something, they're not truly an educator. Because educate, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I've checked with a few people, but it's a word from the Greek for to open up. Something right along those lines. Not to cram full of. Education is something where we are trying to open people up and find what they need and what moves them and what drives them and keep it moving forward. And the better skill sets you have, the more you enjoy it, the more you find your own creative style or voice, whatever you like to call it, working its way into whatever music you're doing, regardless of whether you wrote it or not. It should be your own. The more of your own creative voice that gets into it, the better. So you want to look for people who help you discover that and explore that. All right? Hope that helps, and I'll be back for more. Always feel free to shoot me messages wherever you find me. Shoot me a message. I answer them all. And say, hey, Phil, what about this? Ask me any question you like. I'll turn it into a video or an episode or both, on my podcast, Your Music Mentor. I am at your service. That is my driving force as a music educator, is that I am at your service. I am at the service of everybody who I'm trying to help enjoy music as much as I do. There's only one thing I like more than getting you on the stage where you'll have a great time, and that's getting myself up there. I want you to have that joy in your life. All right. Peace.